MMA is known for its intense and brutal fights, with fighters often pushing themselves to their physical limits. But when it comes to knockouts, there are some that stand out above the rest. These are those moments that make fans hold their breath and opponents question their career choices. From spinning kicks to devastating punches, the fighters we will discuss today have shown the world what it truly means to be a knockout artist. We'll see the sheer determination and skill that it takes to come out on top in MMA. So, get ready to witness some of the most jaw-dropping knockouts in MMA history. Number 1. Edson Barboza vs. Terry Etim, the spinning wheel kick at UFC 142. This time, our champion Edson Barboza used a spectacular piece of legwork to knock out Terry Etim in the third round of a fight that was an otherwise tense moment between the two. By making his spectacular move, he became the first fighter in the UFC to use this tactic. However, Junior was knocked off his feet in the first round by punches and kicks from Etim, who started the fight as the aggressor. Even though the Big Brit tried his best to get his Brazilian opponent to the ground, unfortunately he could not complete a smooth takedown on Barboza, who had dominated the stand-up game thus far. In the second round, Barboza continued with devastating kicks, forcing Etim to close the gap with mixed results. Etim was able to sneak in a couple of shots and a big takedown to keep things interesting, but Barboza got the fight back on track in 10 seconds. At the beginning of the third round, Etim attempted to gain the upper hand, but Barboza was resilient. He returned the favor with his own brutal kicks. Then, at 2 minutes and 2 seconds, after Etim was off balance due to the flurry of Barboza, Barboza went in with a spinning wheel kick, landing his right heel on Etim's jaw and sending him to the Shadow Realm. Number 2. Dan Henderson vs. Michael Bisping, a Hendo Bomb at UFC 100. Dan Henderson and Michael Bisping had set up a good foundation for themselves as two of the best middleweight warriors in the world. Henderson, a former Pride FC middleweight and welterweight champion, was the first fighter in a major organization to hold both titles at the same time. Bisping, on the other hand, was the first rising star on the British MMA scene. Most people thought that Bisping could only win the fight if he stuck, moved, and danced his way to a calculated and careful decision. However, instead of circling to Henderson's right and away from his power as the first round ended and the second stanza began, Bisping increasingly ignored the advice of his cornermen and instead circled to Henderson's left, which in turn brought him within range of Henderson's powerful overhand right. Soon he started to count the drawbacks of neglecting the counsel of his cornermen. Unfortunately, it was evident that this mistake cost him, and his defeat was imminent. Bisping kept his distance and successfully avoided several right-hand haymaker attempts from Henderson for just a few minutes of action. However, Henderson read the Brit like an open book and discovered his range at the 3 minutes and 20-second mark of the second round, flooring Bisping with one of the most brutal right hooks in UFC history. This victory was one of the most phenomenal, as Henderson's capabilities were showcased to the world, and fighters were sure not to take the knockout power of Dan Henderson lightly. Number 3. Wanderlei SIlva vs. Jackson 2, the knee knockout at Pride 28. In the 2003 Pride Middleweight Finals Grand Prix, the axe murderer Wanderlei SIlva and Quinton Rampage Jackson were said to be the greatest stars in the weight class before this up-and-coming bout. Unfortunately for Jackson, their long-awaited fight did not last very long. SIlva, who was younger, dominated Jackson with superior striking and clinch work before defeating him with devastating knees halfway through the first round. Soon, this epic rematch was scheduled for Pride 28 5 months later, where SIlva was knocked down by a powerful uppercut that Jackson landed near the end of the first round along the ropes, allowing Jackson the opportunity to mount SIlva. SIlva, however, kept his composure and shrewdly hip-escaped from Jackson's brief mount and returned to half guard, arguably saving himself the fight as Jackson threw a flurry of ground-and-pound strikes from the top position. In the second frame, Jackson emerges looking completely gassed. His fatigue would contribute to his undoing as he became outworked and outmatched by the Brazilian during their initial stand-up exchanges. The fight began to resemble SIlva's victory in the Pride Grand Prix, only this time much more brutal. Soon, SIlva slammed Jackson squarely in the face with a crushing hook that torqued Jackson's chin and neck to one side. In a second that would live on unmistakably in feature reels into the indefinite future, SIlva dumped knees into the head of Jackson as the two stumbled across the length of the canvas. The axe murderer cracked Jackson with one final knee to the face before allowing gravity to pull Jackson through the ropes and out of the ring, where he lay face down, unconscious, and bleeding profusely. Number 4. James Irvin vs. Terry Martin, the flying knee at UFC 54. If you didn't know, James the Sandman Irvin was once perhaps one of the most exciting knockout craftsmen in the UFC's light heavyweight division. With his greatest knockout finish of all time, Irvin marked his place in MMA history in a fight with fellow banger Terry Martin in 2005. Both men preferred to headhunt and maintain the fight till the end. Irvin and his opponent refused to relinquish their positions when the action picked up in the first round. However, it was obvious that Irvin never gave in to the pressure, despite Martin consistently outboxing Irvin in stand-up exchanges. As the second round began, it appeared that fans could anticipate 5 more minutes of extreme slugging. However, fans were mistaken, as Irvin would meet Martin in the center of the octagon just seconds into the round with one of MMA's most beautiful flying knees. This spectacular take marked history with power and strength. Irvin was rendered cold on the canvas by Martin's massive, picture-perfect knee to the face. The Sandman's KO was truly an all-time classic and unforgettable. Number 5. Gabriel Gonzaga vs. Mirko Filipovic, the great head kick at UFC 70. When Mirko Filipovic, also known as Cro Cop, entered the UFC in 2007, a lot of people thought that the winner of the Pride Openweight Grand Prix in 2006 would challenge for the UFC Heavyweight Championship. Mirko was the clear fan favorite as he was known to dominate the octagon with devastating head kicks. This time, however, the Brazilian heavyweight Gabriel Gonzaga knocked Cro Cop out with one of the greatest and most unexpected knockouts in MMA history. The modest surprise of the first round came when Gonzaga knocked Cro Cop down and pounded on him for a while with unrelenting elbows, strikes so brutal that a severe laceration would emerge on the face of Cro Cop. However, the Croatian striking sensation appeared to be hopelessly lost in the enclosure, and maybe to some degree dizzied from the elbow strikes. At the 4-minute and 51-second mark, Gonzaga stunned the world by flatlining his opponent with a head kick when the fight resumed on the feet. The same high kick that propelled Filipovic to fame and fortune caused him to collapse under his own weight, wrapping his knee beneath him. After losing his subsequent fight in the UFC to Czech Congo, Cro Cop was dropped from a previous promotion. However, he returned to the octagon shortly after, gaining popularity and warmth from the fans. For his part, Gonzaga rose to the spotlight as one of the most admired heavyweight fighters in the division. In his subsequent fight, Gonzaga fought valiantly but ultimately failed to capture the title from Randy Couture. Let us know below if you want us to rank more MMA fighters and their knockouts. So that's a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed watching it, give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe to our channel for more amazing content.